I see people here, so I'm sure, yeah, come on up. Yeah, I'm sure there's things you want to talk about.
Good evening, and thank you for your service. I'm Sean Jackson from the Mount Pleasant community, and I was here maybe 2 months ago in reference to the zoning code section 208-122-01 or -1, and it is related to the student housing within the township. In the township, we have a total of 13 houses, and in our community, and there's a bunch of us that are back here, we have 8, which is 62%. So of the total housing within the community, which is a burden for many of the citizens there. Now, I did reach out to the zoning director and let her know that there was yet again another house that was put on the market as a student house that is not approved. And I'd like to know what we need to do about that. I've sent information regarding that property. I've sent pictures. As a citizen of the community, I don't think that I am the investigator and need to be the one that does that, but that's what I have done because we feel like, and I'm speaking for the representatives back here as well, that if we allow 927 Mount Pleasant Avenue to continue as a college house, that just opens the door for many more to come. And as I said initially, our burden is 62% of the total population within the community or within the township, which is a high burden for us. In addition to that, many of the college houses are not on the approved list. And my understanding is that annually they are to get an approval and let us know what students are in the properties and whether or not there's more than 3, because there's a total of 3 that are allowed per property. And there's several properties in the community that are not approved. And 2 of those properties that are not approved are an eyesore and a nuisance, for lack of a better word. They constantly have trash all over the place, which is a rodent hazard for the community. We just need some relief. And I don't know who to turn to outside of the zoning board. I've done that and gotten nowhere.
Thank you.
And there's a few other things. Should I address
yeah,
them
well,
now?
actually, I think let's hear about this one first. So, Mr. Martin, you want to talk about this?
Sure. Erin can give you more details.
Erin?
So she handles the student housing. But yeah, so if there's complaints, we're aware of them. Reference to the rental housing, I'll let Erin give some more detail. But in order for us to enforce that, we need evidence. So I appreciate, and I know it's difficult for the residents. So by saying we believe it is, by law, I can only enforce, I have the evidence to enforce it, could take it to a judge. We can ask them if there's student housing. If they don't respond without evidence to show there's students living in there, the district justice won't accept it. So Erin, if you want to give a little more detail of where you are on that.
Right, yeah, that's correct. I mean, I would have to take them to court, and I do need evidence, and I think I mentioned that to you, is any information that you can help provide that. We're gonna send out a letter to see if they'll respond by saying they're student housing, and then I can use their word against them. But it is a little bit, hard to determine that it is a student housing without that evidence. And again, I have to go to court, so I have to be willing or have the information provided that the judge would uphold it.
So the pictures that I've sent you is not evidence enough. And besides that,
Right.
I am not an investigator.
Yeah, no,
And our tax dollars are used to pay for zoning, correct?
correct. And I think the information that you provided was, it was for sale. I understand that it is being used as a rental. You can have a rental that isn't students that would be allowed, and there's no permit required for that. So that's where I need to find out that they are students, and I have to have the information that they are students. Just because it's rented doesn't necessarily make it wrong.
So how do you find out that
That
they're
is the
students?
difficult part. That's what I'm saying.
So is the expectation that the community member provides that information?
Well, in other cases, that has happened. So I've had other student housing, if I got a police report and the students, I've used that before where they, a police action has occurred and they labeled themselves as students. I've used that. I've had short-term housing or short-term rental where a resident was able to provide me with information and license plates and information that helped me be able to say, you know, there was a turnover. That's a different type of use. But the residents did help me with that to get the information that I needed. So I understand that it is difficult. It's difficult for me. It's difficult for the community. I understand that. They're your neighbors. But I do need evidence in order to proceed with that.
And how do you propose getting that evidence?
Well,
Because
right.
as the community member, I'm not the investigator.
I understand that, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Any information you can provide, if you have, you know, I know you mentioned that you had spoken with one of the people. If I could have information on that person, maybe I could speak with them. You know, like I said, I'm gonna try to reach out to the homeowner and the property owner and see if they will, you know, give me the information that I need that eventually I could use. I don't know that they would, you know, I think that they have been homeowners, or that property has, I understand, passed down in the family, but they may be aware that they can have students, so I don't know that they're gonna provide me with that, but that's really, you know, the only thing that I can think of that would, you know, that I can get from them if they do provide it. It's certainly not easy.
So then how is
Yeah,
this
can I-
zoning code
Sean,
upheld? One
hold-
second, I have one
I
question.
wanted to ask,
Okay,
hold on
go
for a
ahead.
minute. Let me ask the question, and I got to, Pat. Okay. Mount Pleasant, with me being at large, Mount Pleasant is in my territory. So I'm going to ask you a legal question and tell me if this can be done, because I got to make sure it's right. So let's just say I happen to go past, because I know where the house is and I'm talking to someone, or someone in the area gets me the name, or one of the students say, oh, I go to Villanova, okay? Is it okay for me to call Nova to confirm, is John Doe one of your students? And if Nova says to me, yes, can we use that? Or if they go to Haverford or wherever, and if I can get that,
If you have information from the university that
can I
confirms that
use
they're a
that?
student, sure. I don't see why you couldn't use that information.
So I've
Okay.
tried that as well. I've tried to go to Villanova in another case where I thought I had a suspicion that it was a baseball house. I went to Villanova, and Villanova told me that they had no records of students that lived off campus, and they weren't able to provide me with that information. So I have tried that aspect as well.
The only reason why I was gonna do is I'm gonna use quote unquote, I'm gonna if they happen to go to Nova, I'll come through the back door as an alumni and, you know.
I mean, if you can get it, that's fine, but
But I wanted to ask Pat, is it okay, you know, is it okay legally for me to do so? I don't want them to say.
Well, Carlotta, I hate giving legal advice from the dais, to be
know.
completely honest with you. So why don't we talk about that offline?
Okay.
I would prefer that. I also don't really want to the extent that we're going to investigate, with all due respect, I don't know if they're watching, and I would really rather not give them the path of the action we intend to take. So I think perhaps we can have that conversation offline
Yeah.
and see if there are other things that we can come up with. I don't disagree. Obviously, we have the burden, if we were going to cite someone, that we have to establish with that court that, at a minimum, that they're in violation of the ordinance. Go ahead, please.
I was going to suggest sort of where you're headed, which is, I think we need to have a meeting with, I hate to ask you to come back, but I think we should have a meeting not public, or not, you know, on TV, to talk about what we're going to do to help the community. Because you've been here before, I feel for your problem. We as a township need to come up with a specific action that doesn't involve you with a camera taking pictures of your neighbor, you know.
Well, that's been done.
No, I get it, but I'm saying, like, making you the investigator. I hear your issue there. On the other hand, we have things we need also. So I think if we could arrange, do you have contact details? Or-
Yes, I
You just hang
can
after
do
this
that.
meeting, if you don't mind, for a few minutes.
Not at all.
And let's just see if we can organize a time to get together and talk about what we can actually do constructively that moves the ball forward and identifies whether these guys are really, I mean, I believe you, by the way. It identifies the problem and can actually make some progress versus next month you're here again complaining, like it's just not helpful for either of us, right?
Chairman, no, I think
appreciate
that's a
that.
great idea. But I have a question for you, Aaron. It's been a long, long time since I looked at the ordinance because it was passed years ago. What about all the registration requirements? What about all the compliance requirements, 1,000 feet and this, that, and the other? I mean, do we just, I'm just saying,
Right, so,
I hope we just don't ignore them, you know, I know we don't ignore them.
so there were grandfathered homes at that time of the adoption.
Okay,
So those homes are the ones that have continually registered. So any new home, I don't want to talk about if I could get this home to admit that they're student housing rental, technically, or not technically, they would be required to get a special exception from the zoning hearing board. In that special exception, those requirements would have to be met in order to get the special exception. They would not meet that. So they would be denied, most likely, by the zoning hearing board.
right, so the grandfather, real quick, so the grandfathering, I do remember that. But does that like exempt them from any requirements?
No, they do get their registrations every year.
But they're allowed to be within 1,000 feet, there's more density.
Yeah, right, they're allowed to be student
Right.
housing. They don't have to meet the requirements of the special exception.
Okay.
But they do register.
Okay, so we have actually registrations?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I guess that's okay. But
Yeah,
and that gives certain information that we can actually use. So if you're having, I'm just thinking out loud here, I don't know, I'm just, spitballing a little bit. Like, you see the fire in the trash can after the weekend party, on a Saturday night. And it's at this address. First of all, call the police, they shouldn't be doing that. But, so there's something here that maybe we can get together. But look, Chairman Miller's made a great suggestion, that's good. I was just wondering about the registration and what we were doing there and how that might dovetail in a certain way into things that are happening at some of these homes, But, my fear was, we have these registration requirements and somebody comes in and just says, the hell with that, I'm not registering anything. And I'm just gonna rent to students. We can't let that, there should be, I don't know.
right.
I
have to be able
don't know
to-
what the answer is, but
Right.
that's not good enough.
Yeah. That is right, that is correct. They should not be they should not be renting without the registration.
Right,
I have to determine that they're student housing so we can go down that path.
I feel for your problem, but anyway, let's get together and talk about an actual path with actions that we can take that hopefully get the situation resolved versus the way we're doing it now, because I agree with you. I hear your concern. If I lived there, I would have the same concerns you're having. And we as a community, as a township, need to come up with some solution that helps you. So, and that, yeah, does that make sense? So if you could just hang right after this meeting, let's figure out a time that we can all get together.
Sure.
Does that work for you?
And then there's some other things that we need to also discuss, such as abandoned cars on the road. Who do we go to about that? The police chief, okay. And then there's some concerns about big dump trucks being parked on the street in front of people's homes and things of that nature. Who do we go to about, is that you as well?
Yes, ma'am, we're working on that. Supervisor Carlotta Johnson, she brought up to us some of those concerns. We're looking at a ordinance revision. We have a draft ordinance that Mr. McKenna has worked with us on, and we're going to be presenting that, moving that forward. There's a hole in our traffic laws that need to be addressed, and that's one thing we're working on to get that forward. So that's going to move on for the oversized vehicle parking. That's something we're on top of. Abandoned cars, by all means, the traffic unit, you can email, there's the little link on the website, the traffic unit. You can call if you want to, a non-emergency number, say, can somebody check out abandoned vehicle? What the officers do, the traffic unit will come out, they'll check it, make sure everything's appropriate, the registration, whatever, make sure it's parked appropriately. And if it is abandoned, they'll start checking off how long has it been there, and they'll have to, there's a process for how long it can be, and I don't have all the details of that. That's what they do. But we'll get on top of that.
Thank you. And one last thing, and then I'm done, I promise. At the top of the street, it says no outlet, but there is a cul-de-sac at the bottom of the street. People turn around in people's driveways and things of that nature. Is it possible now, the cul-de-sac is in Upper Marion Township, it's not in Tredyffrin, but the sign is in Tredyffrin Township. Is it possible to get a sign up there that says there's a turnaround at the bottom of the street, so our driveways aren't constantly being turned around in with these big trucks?
I'd have to look into that. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I never heard that. I've never had that question before, but we'll look into it, and I'll get somebody with a smarter mind to help us out.
I thank you for that, and that's my last concern for tonight.
Excuse me, I had a question for you. Before this property became leased out, I assume it was owner occupied before this. Where did they park? Right in front of the house, or did they have some kind of contract with the church? Like, what were they doing?
That property owner did park in front of the house, but the abandoned cars and the trucks and things of that nature are associated with another property. It's not with the property that has been assumed by students at this time.
So the present residents, do you know how many cars are?
There's 3 cars and 3 students. And I do know one of the students who I introduced myself to, and he told me he went to Villanova. So that's how I know the young man. But outside of that, I don't know. And I do also know that the owner of the property, it was inherited, was told by myself and another community member that he was not supposed to use the house for student housing. And the first semester he didn't. He tried to rent it and it wasn't rented. So then the second semester, because it wasn't rented, then he decided to go ahead and do what he wanted to do and put students in there.
I have a question for Chief Beatty. Can the police department use the license plate recognition software to look up, who's the owners of the cars? Is that something that would be of help, or?
We'll just use a regular investigative. The traffic will go down, check things out, look into it. They'll check the stickers on it, the registration, to see who has it, and they'll do whatever investigative. If it's abandoned, if it meets the requirements, they'll take appropriate action. If it's parked, if it's not parked the appropriate way, if it's parked too close to a driveway, if it's blocking a driveway, whatever they can do, they'll utilize whatever enforcement tools they can.
Thank you.
I can tell you the license plates for the students, one's from Connecticut, one's from Maryland, and the other one I think is from New York. And if you'd like, I can take pictures of them too.
That's very helpful.
Sounds good.
Sorry, I haven't done this in quite a while. Janet Burton, resident of Tredyffrin Township. I'm just making the recommendation that the ordinance for the college student be reviewed, revised, whatever, to put some teeth into it. We thought 20 years ago when we worked on this that it would alleviate any further houses being designated as college houses. So apparently that's not happening. Registration's not being enforced, et cetera. So I think we need to address the ordinance itself to try to put some controls in it that help us as residents be able to, I'm not saying we police it, but be able for the town to police it better for us. So when we meet to discuss about that situation, I hope that we look into really just revising the ordinance itself. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Vanita Banks Lane, and I'm a longtime resident of the Mount Pleasant community. I'm here with support of my fellow neighbors in the area. I've been here with many of them several times, and I'm here again, okay? I don't know what's going on in the community, and we know the whole landscape of the world is changing. We've had a lot of new neighbors come into the neighborhood. We try to be as friendly as we can, but continually we keep having the same problems over and over and over again. college students. You heard Sean talk about that. You also heard her talk about the construction vehicles, which are in the neighborhood now. New neighbors have come in, new houses are being built, and people don't know what the ordinance are, or even how to just govern themselves as they move in as residents. My concern is, along with the college housing, is the construction vehicles. Now, I'm not talking about your typical Ford or Chevy pickup. I'm talking about construction vehicles that are parking on the street, that are blocking the residents from going up and down the street, that are blocking the mailboxes, which I believe if it works the same way where you live, where we live, your mail's not being delivered. Commercial properties is not Mount Pleasant. It's residents. So why are commercial properties coming in and parking their construction vehicles in the neighborhood? As I stated before, a lot of movement, a lot of construction has been going on Mount Pleasant Avenue. People have not been able to park where they normally park on the street because of all this. Now, I would imagine as construction is being done, the township is coming down and looking at all this, making sure that things are being done right. Nothing's been done. I personally have called the police. I'm still waiting for them to get back to me. I've called Erin McPherson. I'm still waiting for her to get back to me. What do we have to do? That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Yeah,
I apologize if somebody get back to you, but please call me. We will get back to you. And like I mentioned earlier, the traffic ordinance is being updated so we can address that vehicle. We understand what's going on with it. We've been looking at it. We had to do an ordinance change, which takes a little bit of time to get going, but we are going to do it, and we're going to make sure we address that. But we have to look, when the ordinance, you can't do a spot. We have to be collective for the whole township, and we're working on that collectively to work with the solicitor to get an appropriate ordinance so we can't have those large commercial vehicles on a residential street.
Sorry. I heard you say that, and I hope that you're going to follow through with that. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Bird, and I'm a long-term resident there in Mount Pleasant. I want to address two areas. One, to the chief of police. I think sometimes when we call, we don't get the response that we expect, and it has to do with the college students because they party a lot. And of course, I'm sure my kids did the same thing. However, they came up to another level this past year. They put up blue tarps that probably stretched from here all the way across. You were a witness to them. And we were told that they weren't doing anything wrong. However, we found out that they were bringing in underage kids and they were charging and different things. It took like 2 hours for the police to come out, and finally we called on Carlotta and she got some people down there. I don't know what's going on behind the blue tarps. What I do know from where I lived, they were urinating facing me, and I'm talking about girls, boys, underage, everything. And I took pictures, and it wasn't really pretty, but of course I didn't, give those pictures out. But that's a concern, that's nudity. Not only that, they have thrown beer bottles over the fence and stuff. They leave the trash, as you've already heard. So I guess we need a little bit more attention when we do call. We had 6 or 7 people. We got on the phone. We called a couple times, and nothing happened. Not only that, there were children coming down, young people, coming down in Uber cars. There's no way they had seatbelts on because it looked like a clown car. They had like 10 people getting out of the car, coming to the party. Where's the party? They're parked all the way up the top of the street, coming down. So that's my first issue, and it's not anything personal against you, but it's something that, hey, our community deserves a little bit more attention when we have those many college, houses in the neighborhood. The second thing kind of ties into that signage that we were talking about at the top of the hill, and I did call the police one time, and that's when they had they were doing a survey up there. They had the speed limit thing up there, and they were saying, well, it looks like you had 1,000 cars. Well, that wasn't true. It was picking up the cars from Upper Gulf. But besides that, when we were talking about the construction vehicles, I had one in front of my house one day. They're putting in the new housing up there, and it's just about done. But I have never seen a vehicle that long in my life. It was like two new car carriers. It was huge, and they were rolling this stuff off and everything. So I went up and I asked the owner, I said, are they going to be done? Because my mailman doesn't get out. He's not going to get out of the car. I might not get it, And he said, yeah, they're going to move. He was very nice about it, but it didn't move. So we're talking about construction vehicles that shouldn't be parked there, or at least parked in front of where the construction's going on, but then that would interfere with other people getting the mail. So I think that's something to be thought about in terms of the signage. And again, it is a problem. It does say no outlet. That is very true. But I have had huge trucks back in my driveway. My pavement doesn't, support that. Other people, the same thing. Wherever there's wide enough for, they'll back in. And our houses are close to the street. They could take out half of the house if they weren't paying attention. So those are just things that I just wish that we would get more attention when those type things happen, especially since we have so much activity, like was just said, the neighborhood's changing, it's gentrification at its best, and we just need to do what we can do to stop it, if at all possible, or to help us out. Thank you.
Okay, another story. How you doing? My name is Tom Tron. Next September, I'll be in that Mount Pleasant area for 50 years. So I've tried to foster a relationship with an owner of two properties. He mentioned to me to be careful mentioning his name. He is an investor. He borrowed money, bought two homes. Now he has made an LLC, Mount Pleasant Holdings. He says it's not his place, but yet it's addressed to his residence in Chester Springs. So this is, I sent him a text on December 12th. I said, Roger, 995 and 985, party's still a mess. This is 1 o'clock in the morning. 3 cop cars, drunk kids yelling, Ubers, street blocked. Give these kids hell. 4 neighbors, including myself, were impacted with this. And the next message in the morning, I said, I was out on the street this AM picking up their cans and trash. The drunk fools left the front door open. He responded saying, oh my God, I did forward your text to the tenants, including a couple of the moms. One has already responded saying she will check into it and apologize. And I could keep going on this, but my point is that it's an LLC. So I'm glad I have a relationship with Roger. When there's a problem like this, I can text him and say, Roger, this is a problem. There's trash everywhere. He can then text the kids. If it's an LLC, who do you contact? There isn't a front person. I think the township, at least in my street, needs that. We need to be able to have somebody to call up in a friendly term and say, hey, there's a problem. And it makes it easier for us and easier for the police. And I think it's more efficient and beneficial.
Thank you. Aaron, as part of the registration, don't they have to, yeah, go ahead.
Right, each of the registrations do have contacts, so you could, and I think some of the residents have requested the copies of it through a right to know. You could get copies of their registrations, which has all the contact information on it.
Come on up.
See if I got this.
No, leave it on. Red.
On?
Red.
Or
Red.
on now?
Yep.
Okay, Christine Johnson again. I just want to say that this student housing ordinance thing, it's not limited just to Mount Pleasant. And we all know that Villanova bought Cabrini's campus, and they're due to start classes there in 2026. The house across the street from me right now, there's six Villanova students in there. They pay about $1,000 each. So the guy's getting like $6,000 for the house. It's a dump. Now, what's to stop people other people, if they're gonna get, they can rent their house in Tredyffrin for $6,000 and they don't give a crap, like, what happens to it. This isn't gonna just stop at Mount Pleasant. And you really have to you'd figure out a way to enforce the student housing ordinance. It's not just us. With Villanova moving in, it's gonna be like a hot place. You know?
No, we're
It's not
concerned.
gonna be
That's
pretty.
why we're having a meeting to talk about what we can do here. 'Cause
You
we
know,
need
right
to-
now, like, you're saying that it's not enforceable. There's nothing we can do about this additional house. So if I wanted to go home tomorrow and rent my house out to 4 college students, there's nothing you can do to stop me. If Tom, you want to rent your house out? Nobody can stop you. There's nothing anybody can do about it. So, you know, investors, realtors, you know, Tredyffrin's the place to do this in, unless you can stop it. All right? That's all.
Yeah. Any other citizen new business? Our next meeting is March 17th, 2025.